This is The Blockchain Show. The Blockchain Show is a podcast that demystifies and promotes widespread adoption of cryptocurrencies and distributed ledger technology.
You're listening to episode number 59 with Ben and Craig from Crowd Machine.
Keep these gentlemen entertained.
Look at that British accent, or listen to that British accent.
I know. I've been working on it for years, as I tell all the women in the bar. It's terrible, yeah. Walking into bars and ordering a Guinness very loudly. It's a terrible thing, but somebody's got to do it, haven't they? Whereabouts are you guys?
Well, I'm in San Jose.
I am in New York City at the moment because I've been at the Consensus Invest.
How was the event, out of interest? Because it's always good to get some feedback on these events.
This was the best of the Consensus events that I've been to, and I've been to a couple of them. This one was actually really for the companies that were looking to meet investors, and likewise, where I think the summertime Consensus event it's becoming more like a Money 2020 for crypto.
Yeah.
And so I think this one filled a void that had not yet been filled. It was surprising to me that there was as many investors there as there were. So that was, I think, reassuring. I know of a couple of companies that just had no problem setting up meetings, meeting investors that were interested in their projects. So I think that's really encouraging.
Absolutely. And I've seen a change in the last month even. I've got people talking to me saying, I've heard that my money is safer being invested in Bitcoin than banks. Can you talk to me about it? So the change has been phenomenal. And I think that must be happening with investors as well. It's a bit like that .com bubble, which we saw.
Yeah, well, I was around for the .com bubble, Ian, and it was a scary place to be. So I'm hoping we're not experiencing that again.
Anyway, thank you for that insight. But we need to know who you are. Please introduce yourselves and tell us a bit about Crowd Machine.
Okay, well, my name's Craig. I'm the CEO. Crowd Machine is both an outgrowth of many years of experience building all sorts of apps, and also a vision of the future. So we'll, I guess, get into that a bit as time goes on. But right now, I'll let Ben introduce himself as well.
Hi, Ben Gorlick, CTO, and Bitcoin and blockchain enthusiast. We're happy to be here and happy to introduce ourselves further as we get into the Crowd Machine project.
Fabulous. Thank you for that. So just to start us off, what's the basic elevator pitch for your platform?
That one's pretty straightforward. We're decentralizing centralized infrastructure. And to do that, it's an easy thing to say. To do that is quite difficult. And in so doing, obviously very much aligned with the whole blockchain space that's evolving around us today. So I guess let me explain what that means a little. There are sort of three major aspects to the technology. The first one is a decentralized compute network. And this isn't any sort of just network that's running a specific type of app. This is a network that will run any type of app. And embedded in that crowd computer is our Crowd App Studio. So we actually have a very comprehensive development technology that exists inside the crowd computer that allows developers and non-developers to create applications. So we have really completely removed the need to understand how to write code to participate in building whatever type of decentralized app you want. They can be simple, they can be very complex, and today there's a number of Fortune 500 companies that are actually using the technology to build solutions. So we have truly removed the need to understand the art of coding, and in so doing, we're powering just a very large demographic of people who can now participate in creating decentralized solutions. So we've got in our customer base today, we've got customers like Anthem Health, General Electric, Aon Hewitt, and a number of others, PwC. So those types of customers can now use different personas inside of their organizations to participate in creating solutions. And because of the nature of the technology, it's much, much faster to create those outcomes. We've got examples on the low side of about 10 times faster, and on the high side about 45 times faster to create an app and bring it to market. So that's sort of the computer and the design environment. The other piece we have is what's called CrowdShare, and think of it as being like GitHub. And the way it works is that, and we need to sort of step back, I guess, and understand a little bit about how our technology fundamentally works, but I'll come to that. What it is it allows, the CrowdShare allows people wherever they are in the world to actually add complete apps, or think of it as components or capabilities, functionality to CrowdShare, and then for other developers or members of the community to consume that content into their own applications, much like you'd be taking it from GitHub. But whenever that piece of technology, that piece of functionality gets executed anywhere on the network, the person that contributed it is rewarded in tokens. So what we're trying to do is bring opportunity to people all over the world, regardless of where they're located, and reduce the barrier of entry to participate by removing the need to actually code.
Does this have to do with being blockchain agnostic? That's a term that really caught my eye.
Yeah, we are blockchain agnostic. We're doing a number of things to make it much easier to work with existing blockchains as well. For example, you can ingest an Ethereum ABI. So in effect, if you have a smart contract, you can ingest that into the environment, and it automatically exposes all the methods that you can call on that. So we are doing things specifically for blockchains, but we are blockchain agnostic. We have extensive integration capabilities in the product to allow you to make calls on anything that you want. We believe on that front that blockchains will become more specialized. I think you're going to see blockchains for different specific types of purposes. And so having a capability that allows you to call multiple different blockchains as a function of an application that's executing, I think, is an important step moving forward. There'll be blockchains for auth, and there'll be blockchains for specifically for different types of ledgers, blockchains for medical records, so on and so forth. So you may end up creating an application that's working with 3 or 4 different blockchains simultaneously. So we're remaining agnostic on that front.
Wow, that's quite an impressive platform there. It's interesting because with the cloud computing revolution, I spent a lot of time consulting with organizations to centralize their infrastructure.
Yep.
And then with the hybrid clouds, that then decentralized the applications. What are some of your customers saying when you go to them and say, look, you need to decentralize your applications?
Well, these customers are big customers, right? And so they're not even sort of at that point yet. And I think it was interesting. We ran a webinar several months ago on blockchain, and we had about, it was sort of an invite only to CIOs. We had about CIOs and VPs. We had about 350 attendees on that webinar. And post the webinar, we sent out a survey just to get a sense of within these enterprises who was doing what. And right now, most of them are just kicking the tires on blockchain, right? So it's baby steps. The market's going to take a long time to evolve. And so what we're doing right now is focusing on creating a sense of changing the paradigm around the creation of the apps itself, and then as we move forward, moving further into the decentralized piece. We have a banking solution running on the technology today. It's a significant app, right? It's got like 320 forms in it. It's got hundreds of different of execution pathways and thousands of rules, and it's a 24/7 mission critical system. And at the end of the day, these guys run an end of day. So it's a little old school in the way they think, but that's the way they built it. And it spawns off hundreds and hundreds of thousands of parallel tasks, so calculating basically balances and things like that. So there's an example where in our crowd computer network, we could send those hundreds of thousands of jobs off to, a litany of hundreds of thousands of devices out on the network and have them come back within several seconds and take what their end of day is today. It usually takes them anything from 20 to 40 minutes to run their end of day. And because we can get access to that many different devices on the network and run them in parallel, we can have a response back literally in seconds as opposed to minutes. So I think there's a couple of factors that come into play when you're talking to enterprises over time. One is that they need to be sold on the fact that these networks and decentralization is super secure. And I'm hoping that things like Bitcoin is going to prove us right in that sense, right? So that's going to take time for them to get comfortable about it. The second thing, or the second factor you've got to take into consideration with these types of corporations is the cost. All right, security first, cost second. So if there's a real competitive advantage or a real distinct advantage in reducing the cost of running infrastructure because you're leveraging spare resource capacity around the planet in the form of processor capacity and memory, then over time they will migrate to it. So it's a long answer to a short question, but I believe that the writing is on the wall and we are moving towards a decentralized future.
So from that viewpoint, do you think that the role of the developer is going to change because of your platform? Instead of working on a project, they're going to be working perhaps on just segments of projects?
There's two aspects of that that I consider in. One is, yes, they can, and developers do that today as well, right? So you can work on a part of a product. I think the more important aspect of it here is that the audience of potential participant is much, much larger, and you can move closer to the point of requirement. So instead of having a bunch of software engineers writing the code, taking requirements from the business line or whoever the end customer is, you're sort of moving closer to the point of need. So the demographic actually changes. And I believe the role of developers over time will change, but that's a completely different sort of conversation. But software is getting very, or the creation of software is becoming much more automated, and so the developer's function is going to shift from what we traditionally understand it to being more involved in actually capturing requirements and facilitating those requirements in a different type of automated manner. And that's what we're doing.
That makes a lot of sense, because the translation of the business needs to actually what the developers hear is always something which is a very good skill. So the closer we can get to the business as a platform, it's got to be a good thing.
Yeah. Well, we believe so. Yeah, we're betting on it.
Absolutely. So if an organization has got a need for redeveloping an application or creating a new application, what's the sort of process with yourselves?
Oh, you're really asking us, how do they get started, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's pretty straightforward. We will open, obviously the technology exists. We have customers running it today, as I mentioned. In January, we will be opening the technology up for public beta, and we say beta sort of loosely, right? It's the tech is pretty baked, so really it's a case of bringing people in at an absorbable rate, so that we can ensure that the support and training and all those sorts of things that are required can be dealt with. And give us the opportunity to tweak any of those aspects of onboarding a larger community. But certainly we expect that there'll be a lot of people on this technology in a very short period of time because of the nature of what it is.
Fantastic. That's a pretty good platform. Are there any downsides to using your platform?
I don't know.
Your fingers might not be as tired. Because
downsides. We are sort of displacing to some extent an existing culture and industry, and that's one of the challenges that we face as an organisation. Is there going to be a backlash from your die-hard developers? I don't know. I've seen examples of it in the past where there's fundamental disbelief, but that changes once we prove the tech. It's not a technology that you're going to go and create an operating system with or something like that, right? It's really it's an application creation technology. And by that I mean any sort of website or business-facing application that you want to create. And certainly we have a roadmap that we're working toward, and we want to add additional features. We're not seeing any inherent limitations in any of the projects that have been taken on today. And we have pushed the boundaries fairly significantly. We're in the health arena, we're in the banking sector, as I've mentioned, we're in the industrial Internet of Things sector. So it's been, and a bunch of others. So it's been pushed quite hard from a number of different angles. We're not sort of seeing any real limitations today. So far so good.
Absolutely, I understand. When the return on investment means that people's jobs are at stake, it's a very hard sell for a lot of organisations. But this platform definitely makes sense to myself.
So I would go so far as to say it's not that the downside is that we're talking about people's jobs being at stake. The platform is not designed to disrupt the industry of coders such that the coders all disappear from the job market. The technology is designed actually in a way that could invite an entirely new class of developers, which is that class that has ideas, are innovators, understand how to describe the business requirements of a product need that a business is trying to fulfill, but perhaps doesn't have a computer science degree, perhaps doesn't have a background in programming, perhaps their team has bigger ambitions than the development resources they have available at their fingertips, and yet they still need to execute. And I think that's an exciting proposition, and we see startups and even enterprise companies today struggling to get apps and products into the market. And this is a technology that can help them overcome that. It may, in fact, create jobs, not limit them, but it certainly will present a paradigm shift in terms of how apps are created, how apps are executed and run. And that is where I think we'll see the disruption happen.
Yeah, it means more flexible working for the future developers.
It might mean more time on people's hands too to figure out what else they want to do with their development resources.
Yeah,
exactly.
I was going to say the other side of that is the actual compute network itself, right? So I think, as I mentioned earlier, you're going to see disruption in centralized infrastructure participants in the longer term. If you look at the billions of devices that are on the planet that are mostly underutilized, you're sitting there right now probably with your cell phone sitting beside you. Why not monetize the thing, right?
Yeah.
Make it available in the network, use its spare capacity. And if you look at all the Gartner stats and the analysts' reports that are coming out, the billions of IoT devices have all got processors in them. They've all got spare memory capacity. So we've just got this massive compute engine that sits out there today that is largely untapped. And so I think that's a bigger opportunity. And so the way our tech works, and I sort of alluded to it before, is that in our world, applications exist as pieces. They're not one large monolithic binary. So what that means is that you can have these smaller devices actually participate in the network and still deliver the app functionality to the end user. So an app sort of exists as multiple fragments across the network. So these IoT devices, mobile phones, desktop computers, laptops, etc., can all participate.
Fantastic. Does this mean that it's far easier to develop following the sun? So you've got a 24-hour development cycle?
Is it far easier? Look, software companies have been doing that for quite a while. I ran a dev team that did that. We had 3 different teams around the planet, and the challenge wasn't so much that, Ian, as it was the complexity of the types of things that you're trying to do, and the challenge of getting one team to understand what the previous team had done, and trying to document that and trying to make sure that the code was legible or written in such a way that it could be followed. Those are the practices that this technology removes. You actually draw your logic on the screen as a set of blocks. So you can just look at an image and go, okay, there's the code, right? So it's far more transparent in terms of what you're trying to achieve. And passing that off to somebody else makes it much, much easier for them to pick it up. They can just look at the logic steps on the screen and go, okay, I can see the code without actually looking at lines and lines and lines of text, right? So it's not so much does it make it easier to manage teams as it is that it's easier for each team to comprehend what the previous team has actually done, and it's much, much faster to actually create apps, period.
I think your figure was 40% quicker.
Well, more than that.
Traditional methods.
It's about anything from, we've seen bottom side 10 times, top side 45 times, not 40%.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It is significantly faster. We've had examples where customers have quoted internally a certain amount of time to build an application in a traditional manner, and one of them I think was 6 months or 7 months, and it was delivered in 4 days using our technology. So massive difference.
Wow.
In this case, seeing is believing, I think, for a lot of people, and that's one of the reasons that we've been already hosting webinars, and especially in the crypto space, where this is now being really introduced. And some of the feedback we've had from CTOs and developer architects for some of the crypto companies has been very positive. In fact, some of them have said, "This is amazing. I didn't know a technology like this even existed in the world." And as I mentioned earlier, startups struggle with getting products to market, even ones with great development teams. You can have a fantastic background in coding, but that still means that your entire team needs to be able to collaborate on a project that's bigger than what one person can do. And having a technology that provides a consistent natural language model to be able to do that is really empowering for a team of developers. And when you get into where we see the space heading, which is let's kind of take a look at smart contracts, for example, and we're seeing really this is really in its infancy today, right? Ethereum perhaps really pushed the ecosystem to think about smart contracts even more so in terms of the security aspects that have presented challenges, where it could all head in the long term. And we can realize today that what smart contracts can do right now and what they could potentially do in the future are vastly different. And this technology is looking to help really close that gap, which is why blockchain agnostic is so important to us from that perspective. Because you take a look at, for example, Blockstream announced Simplicity as a language for smart contracts in the future for Bitcoin. Simplicity will likely need a technology like this to provide a natural language for people to be able to easily build those smart contracts that have formal verification and formal proofs, and how do you approach that as a developer if, you're only looking at, say, the assembly language version of the smart contracting capabilities, which might be extremely robust and powerful, but very difficult from the barrier to entry perspective for, let's say, the average developer who understands that they want those features and functionality and security guarantees, but perhaps doesn't have the background in coding to be able to implement them.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a pretty comprehensive view of the platform and what it offers a business. Can you just go over the Crowd Machine token and what that is? Tell us about the token sale and what people can expect.
Okay, so the token is a true utility token. It has two uses on the network. The first is to reward the developers who are contributing to CrowdShare, as I mentioned earlier, the GitHub-like experience. And the second is to pay the device owners for participating on the crowd computer. So it is a true utility token, as I mentioned. And the token sale itself will kick off on 21st of February, scheduled to occur then. We've got whitelists already rolling on the website, so people can go and register if they wish to do that. But the intent is that the token actually be used to power the network, right? So if you think about it, people that leveraging their spare device capacity want to be remunerated for that participation and need to be incented to participate. And the same with the developers that are going to take the time to learn how to use the technology to add content to the actual CrowdShare experience. We see it as a way also to, as I mentioned previously, give people in different areas of the globe and perhaps without the benefit of the education that the rest of us have had to get involved in the decentralized economy. So there's a little bit of a, I guess, a altruistic approach that's being adopted with this in terms of sharing the proceeds of decentralization with a much broader community.
Fantastic. And how do people get involved with that? Do they just go to your website, crowdmachine.com?
That's the one. They just head on the website. You can register for the whitelist there. You can jump from there to any of the social media forums. We're on Telegram and Bitcoin Talk and Twitter and the usual set of social media outlets. And ask us any questions you may have. Push our boundaries. We're happy to get involved and give us any feedback that you think may be relevant. We love to hear from people. That's how we learn. And we'll use those experiences to more finely tune our technology and the way we embrace our community moving forward.
Yeah, we have a Telegram group for those that are interested in, being able to have real-time feedback and discussions. I would also say that if one of the listeners is involved in a project today and is interested in testing out this environment from a development perspective, we're happy to help them get started in doing so. We're also going to be taking in a number of project ideas from the current crypto community that is looking to build out products, and we'll actually help them implement those ideas. In some cases, we're going to pick a number of these projects and actually build them ourselves and show them that, how this works, how it can be done. So we'll be taking in probably a handful of those and implementing them here in the near term.
Yeah.
In fact,
so
one more thing on that. I actually just talked with a couple of the people that have already been given access, and I was talking with one of them yesterday, and he had already told me that him and a few of his team have been building apps in the platform presently just to begin trying it out, and I was really encouraged to hear that. It's cool.
Yeah. To that end, there is actually on the homepage of the website, there's a panel where people can actually apply to have their app built out. So if they go to the website and check that out, just fill in the form, give us a description or a link to a Google Drive or something with some details of what it is that you're trying to build. As Ben mentioned, we won't be taking all of them on because there's already a number that have been lodged, but we'll go through them and think or take a look at the ones that we think have real merit and value add to the decentralized community. So we welcome people to actually go to the site and fill that out.
Absolutely. I can think of a number of very good applications that could be used for this, around applications which currently are being used on the cloud or people are using it Amazon for. This would make a lot of sense to actually move it to this decentralized model.
Yeah. Well, you should jump in and register, Ian.
I'm thinking that already. I'm having a busy afternoon filling these in.
Yeah.
So,
Ian, actually, that there's something to that, and if you and your friends would like to try it out, and then for example, we can even do a follow-up podcast on your experience. I think that would really provide a lot of insight to your listeners as to what the experience really was like.
That's not a bad idea. We haven't had an experience since myself and Mark went to the Bitcoin ATM. So that might be something coming up soon once we've got Christmas out of the way. We've got a few other podcasts coming up over Christmas, such as the Bitcoin 101 and Blockchain 101, as well as the Christmas episode recorded somewhere, which should be quite fun. Is there anything I've missed asking you these questions about the platform?
It goes pretty deep in terms of the technology and where it's all heading. What the vision is of technology like this, where it could go in the long term. What kind of new potentialities can be realized. I think that's something that we enjoy thinking about. I often think about the consumer experience in the payment space and where the cryptocurrency, industry has already helped that evolve, but where it could potentially go and how that translates over in terms of the app development industry as well. And, in the consumer space, I often like to say that the ideal consumer experience isn't one where you have to wait around with your credit card being processed before you check out at the checkout line or, go through, whatever procedures today seem quite cumbersome, but one that has the most reduced friction as possible such that you can, collect the goods that you want and then just move on your way without having to go through this, kind of painstaking process of hopefully my credit card is approved so that I can check out here, or it's been declined, here's another one, or let me fish around in my pocket for some fiat currency, or figure out what payments you actually can accept from me. And I think that consumer experience is frustrating, and it's one that merchants have often looked at as to how to reduce the barrier. Similarly, you think about app development. And, you said, to us a little bit ago, I have, several ideas of what you could build with something like this. Imagine a future where you could actually just articulate what your ideas are, and that actually is being built as you're doing so. That's the idea of what natural language could do. And even furthermore, if you think about, what Bitcoin has made possible as it's extended, what the internet made possible, you can imagine that, peer-to-peer individuals can transfer each other, cryptocurrency. In the same way, it doesn't have to be an individual. You could also have a machine transferring to another machine cryptocurrency. In the same aspect, you could imagine a future where an app could actually build out another app. And that's another kind of potentiality that we could see as this evolves.
Yeah. I can imagine you're just pulling together the modules you need to make that application, and then that just goes off and does what it needs to do.
Yeah, the technology is pretty interesting on that front, and that's a completely different conversation. Suffice to say that we do actually have the capability today, and we have tested it, whereby we can fundamentally change the nature of an application at runtime. So imagine or the analogy that you might want to think about is having an application actually writing code around itself or within itself at runtime based upon its experiences and changing itself, right? So that's what we're talking about here. So as the application learns about how it's being used, gains insight into outcomes associated with its utilization, who used it, where it was used, when it was used, all of those types of things, and changing the nature of itself to better the outcome is the type of future that we see in store for us and for software generally moving forward. So it's a little bit of an abstract experience or conversation, but that's where I think it's going to end up.
Yeah.
So just to delve into that, sorry, just one quick question. Does that mean the code is actually writing more code or changing the code, or are we just moving where the application resides?
All of those things. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Fantastic.
And you're kind of touching on both the network and the app development ecosystem environment at the same time there in that question. You can imagine that in the application development side that you can certainly see this happening, but in terms of the network side, the network is capable of being optimized from a performance versus cost perspective as well. So let's say that you've built an application in which the only need that you have is that it runs at the most reduced cost possible. That is something that you should be able to optimize for, versus a application in which you have very low latency requirements, and you need your screens loaded as quickly as possible, or as Craig was talking about in the banking application example, you'd like to be able to do reconciliation as quickly as you can, as opposed to having to wait hours or whatever it is. I mean, we're familiar with the challenges in terms of settlement times in the world of mainstream finance, and I think we see those same challenges in settlement times in terms of app development and getting them deployed. And so we're looking to reduce the barriers for all of those things, as well as the friction involved in the process.
Excellent. That's really, really quite exciting. And it sounds like a pretty wonderful platform, and it's certainly worth looking at. And I'll be looking through your website and reading your white paper after this. What does the future hold? I know that any company out there has got an idea where they're going in 2 to 5 years, whether that happens or not, or whether it explodes out. But what are your sort of plans for the future?
Well, it's been a fairly consistent plan for a long period of time. Obviously, this tech, it's not like we woke up 2 years ago and started writing this tech, right? We've been at it for a while because it is a vast piece of technology. And if you speak to any of our customers, it just blows them away. But the future sort of for us, I think, is we'd like to think of ourselves as being a substantial player in that decentralization process, where we become the go-to technology for creating any application that's going to run in a decentralized world. So whenever anybody thinks about, okay, we need to create and deploy an application to our marketplace or to our user base, we're the first port of call. And obviously, as that occurs and more content grows in our CrowdShare repository, it's sort of it's an exponential growth rate that occurs, because the more content you have, the more users you have, the more people around the planet who can utilize and understand the technology, then the greater the gravitational force or the critical mass that takes place around the tech. So we believe that we have a technology that displaces a lot of the traditional approaches. And we believe that we'll be a substantial player in the whole decentralized evolution or revolution that's taking place in the future. So that's where we want to see ourselves. We want to be a substantial player in that space.
Yeah, I would add to that I'm an evangelist for open source projects, and I think that we today see an enormous amount of effort being put into open source in the cryptocurrency community. In fact, Bitcoin is perhaps one of the most profound open source projects in the history of humanity, and the rewards and ways of compensating open source developers has really been a challenge. I think we've only seen a few examples in the Bitcoin space, for example, where companies have been able to help fund that development of free open source software. We see out here in New York, Chain Code Labs has set up something to support developers who want to learn how to work on the Bitcoin project. And at the same time, you've got developers around the world that are looking to contribute to projects, and in some cases, figure out how to, earn some sort of incentive for having done so. But that often becomes a challenge. If you build something and you want to put it out there and people end up finding it very valuable, it can sometimes be difficult to figure out who's actually using what it is that you've designed and built, and actually how to get remunerated for having done so. If it is something that you'd like to be compensated for, developers got to eat too, right? So,
yeah,
absolutely.
It's an interesting point because typically people have domain expertise in a specific area, right? So what will tend to evolve, I believe, is that there'll be communities within the community. So you'll have people with expertise perhaps in government systems of some description, be it court management or health systems. You'll have communities evolve around finance. You'll have communities evolve around supply chain. So these people with domain expertise, regardless of where they are in the world, will be able to participate in this process and ultimately be rewarded for that participation as their intellectual capital is utilized in different apps around the planet.
Yeah, so I would add to the question of kind of what the future holds for the platform as well, that we'll look to open up aspects of the platform and how it can be extended. In terms of what you can do with applications, it's extremely flexible. For example, if you found that the platform didn't have all of the functionality that you needed for your app because you had some very low-level needs that needed to be implemented, or infrastructure requirements that required something very specific or niche, you can still extend it through APIs quite easily today. In fact, a number of API integrations with existing tools out on the internet are already possible. But in terms of the development environment itself, that could also be extended, and the platform itself could be evolving through the community's interest in seeing it, what's possible to be built with it as well.
Fabulous. That does sound very good. So if you are listening at home and very excited about this, crowdmachine.com is the website. We've got the white paper there, as well as videos, introductions to the team, and an FAQ. And there's even a blog, as well as Craig said, the usual social media outlets where you can find out more information, as well as that offering of the coin. Excellent. Well, thank you ever so much for that. That's been very, very useful, Craig, Ben, and I'm sure we're going to catch up with you pretty soon once we've actually had a play with the platform, and perhaps we come back to you in a few months and see where you are and see what we've done with the platform.
That'd be great. Thank you very much for your time today, Ian.
Yeah, Ian, Ethan, thank you both. We're certainly excited and looking forward to your community's feedback and what the future holds.
Absolutely. As usual, if you've got any feedback, please send it to the Blockchain Show. We've got the website. We've got the Facebook page. Please like the Facebook page. Any feedback is read and we will reply to it. And if it's very, very interesting, we will actually take you up on any feedback and let you know what we're going to do with it. So that'll be great. Thank you again, Craig, Ben, crowdmachine.com. Click on it now. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ian. Bye.
Cheers. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Recording over?
Yeah, we just finished it. Yeah, Ethan had to jump off, so
I don't know if Craig actually just disconnected.
Craig just jumped off. Yeah, he's obviously got to go to the toilet or get a coffee.
Oh, yeah. No, I wasn't sure. Or perhaps he thought that you were literally ending the call. I'm not sure.
Probably. No, that's really quite interesting, and we don't know who our listeners are, but we've got a lot of people that actually.
Yeah, I apologize. I have not actually had a chance to tune into your podcast, and I'm actually just starting to listen to more podcasts these days. I've had my head down and been busy in the weeds for quite some time. The last times besides more recently with Crowd Machine, that I was involved in podcasts in the crypto space was in the very early days of Let's Talk Bitcoin, because I was one of the first entrepreneurs in the Bitcoin space. I didn't really go into the whole background of myself on this call because I wanted to really focus on the platform. But I built cloud hashing. I'm one of the two people that invented cloud mining in Bitcoin. So yeah. Okay. Yeah, I don't know if you know that. And so, yeah, basically cloud mining was invented by myself and one other person. And we,
wow.
So that was one of the kind of big breakthroughs in terms of how do you make mining available to people and that don't have the capability of running the hardware. In fact, my vision back then was that I wanted to introduce Bitcoin to people that maybe didn't even know about it and wouldn't have looked at buying Bitcoin, but would look at using compute as a means to get access to it. And I think back then the world of people who even knew what Bitcoin was much smaller. I probably introduced 5,000 people to Bitcoin that actually ended up holding it as a result of that, which was pretty big back in the day. And those were fun times. I mean, I was 15% of the Bitcoin mining network at one point. So
jeez.
Yeah, we.
That's quite funny because I got a pop up today from bitsclub.com, which is exactly that. You can rent some servers in Iceland, and we will do the mining. Blah blah blah.
I was the first miner in Iceland.
Right, there we go.
Fantastic. In fact, what I would say is that, as far as I'm aware, and I haven't looked too deeply into this. Hold on one second. Hey, Craig, I'm still talking to the guys on the podcast. They didn't actually end the podcast call. They just ended the podcast recording.
Okay.
No. Do you want to jump back on for a minute?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. Yeah. Craig actually didn't have to run to the bathroom. He literally thought that you guys had ended the thing. So
it's fine.
So to finish that point, this is something that I think since you are seeing these advertisements for cloud mining, that we were the only company, and I don't know if this has ever been done since, that actually kept a ledger of every hash of every miner. And we had, I think, 30 terabytes of hash data stored. And I would be surprised if anyone were to ever audit a cloud mining company today, if they could prove that they even hashed for every single hash they claim that someone's hashing on a cloud contract.
Yeah, because who's going to store that much data?
Nobody, unless they're insane like us. I just happen to be. I developed it with cloud hashing was built in terms of the technology by myself and one of the Bitcoin Core developers, and he had actually found it a fascinating project because as far as Bitcoin in terms of the network and all of the aspects of like consensus and the crypto is concerned, it's pretty well understood by at least, I would say, maybe 24 developers out there. But in terms of the mining side of how Bitcoin works and how these cryptocurrency works, it's actually extremely niche. And so he was interested in that aspect because he'd been building on Bitcoin since 2010 and had not even had a whole lot of time to dive into, the aspects of mining, so it was pretty cool. And then we started talking about like, well, I mean, keep in mind, we had no idea, what the response from, governments and, the world would be on cloud mining. It had largely been thought of as, a potential Ponzi kind of a thing at the time, because, how do you prove it? So we said, well, let's actually make sure that if anybody ever does ask us to prove it, we can show for every single customer how many, not only how many hashes they did, but we can actually show the hashes. And, that is funny because nobody ever did audit that. And we just ended up with, 30 terabytes of hash data stored for all of these people. But it made me realize that we were probably the only people that had ever done that, and probably to this date ever did.
It makes sense. It's the same as I'm a member of a British sports car club, and these sports cars are known to break down. So we all carry as many spares as we can. And when you carry all the spares, the car never breaks down. It's sod's law, basically, as we say.
Is it a Jag?
No, it's worse than that. Worse than
Lotus.
That, absolutely.
A Lotus.
No, TVR.
No, don't know it.
Yeah.
Okay.
In that same kind of nerdy undertone, actually, when I spent 2 years at Blockstream, and I haven't contributed to the Bitcoin Core project, but I have, in the sense that I contributed to the libsecp crypto library that Bitcoin uses to protect everybody's money from being stolen. And the reason that I did that is because I was so interested in that part of Bitcoin, as opposed to, trying to build, let's say, on the, network side of it, or, figure out how to, scale Bitcoin or something of that sense. I felt like there was already a large number of people working on that, but I realized there was like 5 people that were actually doing anything interesting on the crypto part. And I had spent time talking to Andrew Polstra, and he said, yeah, I like working on the thing that keeps everybody's money from being stolen. I was like, yeah, that's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, that's the important thing. And I think what you said, security first, is very, very true. And that's what all the banks are really worried about. And it's funny, I still remember working for a bank 2010, and somebody knocked the network cable just out of the back of the server.
Socket. Yeah,
but the cable was still in there, but it was just not touching, and transactions didn't get processed. And I wasn't going to say that on the podcast, but these things do happen. And if you decentralize your applications, especially your settlements at the end of the day, it makes sense. And even though banks are very risk averse, the increase in functionality makes it worthwhile.
Well, I can tell you right now that there are 3 banks running this banking system on the platform, right? And they sit around waiting for their end of days to run. It's their end of days, so they're all itching to go home, and they can't go anywhere until they actually check the final balance to make sure it's all correct and balanced, right? So if we could spool those tasks off to a decentralized network and take 40 minutes down to 20 seconds and do it securely, they would be all over it. So it's those types of opportunities that are going to gradually allow enterprises to move into the decentralized world, where there's a personal benefit for somebody involved, where with minimal risk, then they'll take it all day long, right? And so that's how you've got to think about it. What is the psychological opportunity that I need to lean upon to ensure that that the next steps into decentralization will actually occur?
Yeah, if you want to hear something that'll probably blow your mind, you know AOL Instant Messenger?
Yep.
Do you know where it's still being used today in enterprise?
No, carry on.
It is the primary means by which broker-dealers enter in orders on the stock exchange.
Wow. And are they still using different colors to say which one you should buy?
It's interesting because if you ever do get a chance to walk around on the floor of one of the larger ones in the U.S., you'll actually see people sending AOL instant messages around, and you're like, what is going on here? And in fact, there was a company that was acquired whose entire business was literally translating the AOL instant messages into orders that get entered into the market.
Well, that's like, I don't know if it's still the same, but shipping companies, their reliable method of communication with ships is still fax.
Yeah.
And the British train system 3 years ago was still on Windows 3.11.
I see Ethan there laughing because it's such a mind twist just to imagine that. And yeah, I was like, okay, mind blown. I looked and I said, is that AOL Instant Messenger? Is that seriously what you guys are using?
But you got to think about it in this context, though, guys. And I've bumped into this my entire career, right? If I'm an enterprise and I've got 60,000 users, okay, upgrading from Windows 3.11 to Windows 98 or whatever the hell it was, or Windows NT was an absolute mission, right?
Yeah.
And absolutely, you've got to verify that all of your apps are still going to function on those platforms. You've got to go through substantial training. You've got to put support infrastructure in place to handle people getting lost in the new operating system. And it's the same with any application. And I talk about this quite a lot. It's like I think that the decentralized community think that the world's going to change overnight. Well, hey, shit, it's not, right? It's going to take a long, long, long time to see this actually evolve. You got even Anthem, right? They're still running on, what is it? It's Windows 7. They're running on Windows 7 today, okay? So how old is that operating system now? It was 2007, wasn't it? I think it was actually released. So, you know, there's an example of how slowly these monolithic organizations move. So to suggest that corporations are going to migrate from fiat to paying in crypto, you know, anytime soon, having a lend to yourself.
I worked on a transformation for Barclays away from Windows NT, and the best bit I remember was when we were on the actual floor, the trading floor. We had to give each engineer a camera. They took a photo of the desk beforehand, a photo of the desk afterwards, because if anything moved on that desk, the stockbroker would go crazy because he's hungover when he comes in the morning.
Yep. That's right.
Remember those days?
Yep. And so that it's a mission. Now, I'm not suggesting it's not going to happen. My biggest fear, and I was going to speak about this on the podcast, and I thought, shut your mouth. But my real worry right now is that there's going to be a hell of a lot of blood on the streets around the whole decentralized space soon, right? There have been a lot of promises made about delivery of technology through ICO white papers. There's been an awful lot of money raised backing these ventures. And the people that are making these claims are so far out of their depth with respect to understanding what it takes to actually get a product to market, let alone market the thing once it's there, right? Just the build process alone, they're underestimating the time it's going to take to get their apps to market. And you've only got to look at what's going on with Tezos right now with the class action. That should be scaring the crap out of the industry right now, right? On that note, Craig, which you guys might find this interesting. I spent 2 years at Blockstream, which if you know what Blockstream has been working on, it's a pretty hardcore code development environment, and it's a bit of a maybe like kind of a lab in some ways in terms of trying to build kind of the bleeding edge of infrastructure for this space. And then to kind of look at the other side of this, we're looking at a development system here in which is a zero code build apps environment, and the contrast. And when Craig and I were first talking about this and what we could do with it, it's such a huge leap from looking at here's a team I'm with that builds code as law, right? And that's the governance system that we're becoming more familiar with. To code is no longer required to build things at all, and that is such a paradigm shift that people will have a challenge initially even imagining that can be done, which is why the ability to see it for yourself is so important. But at the same time, I can tell you that even with great development teams that can do an enormous amount of coding, there are still
huge challenges involved with debugging software, with bringing on new developers that don't have familiarity with the language types that you've used. You might see in the cryptocurrency ecosystem, there's a bit of a migration towards things being built using Rust, which is, a programming language that has, strong, properties from a security perspective in terms of, like, for example, a Rust application can't segfault, which is something that often happens with, like, poorly written C programs or C++ software. And, that's why, many people say, well, I guess I can build my thing in Rust and then I won't have segfault issues. But, just because you picked the right language for your application doesn't mean that it's going to actually operate or run as intended. And so you still have an enormous amount of challenges, and you could still have security problems in terms of the application itself and its ability to provide the security guarantees that you need, even if you can say the operating system guarantees are stronger. So, when we look at the challenges that Ethereum faced with the DAO, for example, and the more recently with, Ethereum's lead developers project in terms of parity and the multi-sig wallet. I mean, you've got, what would maybe be considered one of the best developers that Ethereum has ever seen, has had some of the biggest security blunders that the entire crypto space has seen. And, you might, from if you go, I'm a Bitcoiner, through and through, like, I don't actually take that approach because I think it hurts the whole ecosystem when we see these things happen. Because when you talk to a new incumbent, their view is, oh, wow, are these blockchains flawed? Is this just going to be, a repeat, or when, is Bitcoin next, or is the Bitcoin wallet software that I'm using just as likely to have that problem that the parity software had with Ethereum? And, I've talked to family members that have said, hey, look, the reason that, I'm not really involved is because I'm just scared of how do I even secure this stuff when, they my family remembers back when Gox happened, right? And they still bring that up to me. They go, how do I know I'm not going to get goxed, right? And it's just like, and it's hard to even tell people, oh, don't worry. There's all, just all you need to do is, have a totally, truly random seed to create your private key. And then you need to have a perfect cold storage methodology. And then they're like, huh?
Yeah.
It's a worry where it is right now. I think that the industry is very immature, and I think we're going to see some substantial fallout. But, I could be wrong. Let's hope I'm proven wrong.
Well, let's look at this. At the moment, the public all know that Bitcoin is going through the roof. There's going to be there's TV shows. People are talking about it now. As soon as any bad press is happening, and I think it happened yesterday. It's something about Elon Musk and other stuff to do with Bitcoin. The press are going to try and sell more newspapers, more advertising space by getting more people coming. Anything bad happens, and suddenly it's going to be your money's not safe. It's going to drop. We can reinvest in Bitcoin, then it's going to go up. But hopefully, the global nature of Bitcoin will mean that we're less susceptible to that.
Well, that's an interesting point. Was if you look back at the .com era, Ian, that really was a global phenomenon, right? It and the reality was what caused it was overzealous investment. Like I was in Silicon Valley at the time, and I was the CTO of a public company at the time. And I had VCs calling me up saying, hey, look, can you go and take a look at this technology for me? We're thinking about investing in it. So I go off and do my thing, come back and say, hey, look, technology looks really cool. However, putting on my business hat, because I'd been running businesses for a while, right? I can't see how they're going to monetize it. So why would you put money in it? And I had many VCs say, well, I think we should invest in it anyway. So the point being that when things like this happen, all rationale just seems to disappear because people believe that they're going to get rich quick on the back of something, right? And what we're experiencing right now is very, very, very similar to what I saw back in the 2000s. It sounded like you were around at the same time, right?
Yeah. Excuse my appearance. I just came in from a run. Normally, I'm wearing a shirt and I look my age. But yeah, this is my sporty look. I don't normally look like this. Yeah,
That's funny.
very
Yeah.
professional.
I just look old, Ian, so it's all good.
Craig, I can't see you, so you're safe, sir.
Yeah, the challenge right now in what we're seeing in the ICO space is quite scary as well, right? Because the number of ICOs that are claiming to be utility tokens, in which there is not even a product that anyone has ever seen, and if you look at some of the white papers, you'll realize that the difference between their white papers and a marketing document are negligible. Let's just say it's just you go. Like, is everything now a white paper just because it's being launched into the crypto space? And then you looked into those projects and you try to look for what is the actual utility here. And sometimes you're just going, I have no idea. What is the utility of this?
Well, and that's the thing with IBM. I remember IBM with cloud computing. I was competing against them with a different solution. And I had customers that spent $500,000 on a proof of concept that didn't work because they weren't ready yet. And I think it's the same with blockchain. I'm sure that they've got some sort of product that they can sort of tweak that's sort of ready, but they're hyping it up.
Yeah. That happens. It happens a lot in this space.
IBM's no stranger to hyping it up. When cognitive computing didn't sell in the marketplace, suddenly it got humanized and Watson appears on Jeopardy.
Yeah. There you go. Who's your biggest competitor?
That's a really great question, and it might sound silly, but the biggest competitor we run into is entrenched thinking. All right. So shifting the thought process away from, well, that can't be done, to, wow, all right, yeah, it can. That is the single biggest competitor. There's nobody else, and you guys need to take a look at the tech. There's nobody else that is tackling the problem in the same way that we are. There are others that are trying to solve for the same problem. So there's low-code platforms out there like Mendix and OutSystems, and you could even consider Force from Salesforce to be a competitor in that respect. But the argument I always make is this: look, as soon as you step out of the sandbox and into the world of writing code, you've lost the benefit of staying inside the sandbox, right?
Yep.
Because you introduce the full app lifecycle model back into the experience. So you're back to developers, unit testing, round that cycle back and forth with requirements and all the rest of it, and eventually you pop out to your UAT, user acceptance testing. So if you're going to write code, hey, you're going to pay the price. And look, I can say that hand on heart because, damn, I spent a god-awful long time writing frickin' code, all right? So I've written assembly, C, C++, and every goddamn language between that and Python. And so I can justifiably argue the point that that coding is a time-consuming, expensive, and risky pathway to getting an app to market.
Yeah, I agree. And I understand your perspective very well because I spent 7 years evangelizing and doing pre-sales for a cloud computing solution where the ROI was basically reduce the amount of staff to support your whole platform, centralize your whole platform. You need to embrace the cloud. And this was at a time when nobody else was really looking at the cloud. We've got our servers. We know what we're doing. We don't want to really deliver everything through the browser. Are you crazy? We could never do that. And I understand that uphill battle. But this looks far more tangible in regards to benefits than what I was struggling with before.
The concept of money is not too different from the concept of the cloud. And it is in the same sense that for the first time, people are starting to actually ask the question of what is money and looking at the properties of it, other than economists. And I think cryptocurrency is really kind of shaking that tree pretty hard and is continuing to do so. And what we have not seen yet, and I think we hope to, help really lead that, is shaking the tree of what is the cloud? Because truly most people have no clue. They hear the word, it sounds really nice. It's being used by how many thousands of companies today, and what is a cloud service provider? And, what are the guarantees and assurances? And in fact, it's been marketed so effectively by the PR companies that have been hired by these, monopolies, you could say, in the cloud space, that you really can't distinguish between what the cloud is and anything that existed prior to it. And it actually has this allure of being the safer play in terms of how to make your application sustain in terms of the marketplace. And then what companies tend to find is that it's actually quite complicated to provide the assurances that they thought that they were going to get without spending an arm and a leg to do so. And in fact, even in the development cycle process, and I speak from experience, having started a few companies myself, where we sometimes said, oh, well, let's just use AWS to just test out our ideas. And then at the end of a 30-day month of testing out your ideas, you get a $50,000 bill and you go, whoa, hold on a second. I could have done all of this on a single server in our other room. We just thought this was going to be convenient. And next thing you're trying to rethink how you even bring your app to the market in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. Basically, cloud computing is using someone else's processing power and compute.
Yeah,
these days.
Fundamentally, yeah. Although, there's a lot of enterprises like GE, one of the customers, they have their own cloud center, right, which is effectively just their own data center and they refer to it as their private cloud network.
That's what I used to build for customers. It was a private cloud, but it's hybrid. So it centralized all the applications within the browser, but the authentication to applications which sat externally as part of the hybrid cloud, they just opened, and the end user didn't know whether it's a local application, Citrix, or external application. It was a lot of fun.
You're talking to me about Citrix. I don't think the other two guys on the Skype session know what Citrix is. Do you guys remember what Citrix was? Is that what you were selling at the time, Ian?
No, it was an aggregation portal which used Citrix, but we could aggregate any delivery method, so virtual applications, Citrix. We do endpoint inspections so that if the application existed locally, we'd run it locally, as well as dealing with the authentication for any external cloud providers. So it gave an organization the opportunity to roll out applications to the end user, but it was invisible where that application was coming from.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the reasons that cloud has been so prolific, and actually one of the challenges in terms of why they are so proprietary in terms of the actual infrastructure that they use, is because of the monetization requirements in order to maintain your market position as a cloud provider. And this is something I spent a lot of time thinking about while I was developing software and designing systems at Blockstream. And I actually invented a solution for this that has been implemented and is something that we're using similarly in the network design here at Crowd Machine, and that is that if you are providing a solution that has somewhat of a hybrid property, that it makes you somewhat of a centralized provider, and yet you are wanting to decentralize that, but you, in doing so, let's say you have to then open up your entire system to the world and give them, access to, if they wanted to, just take it and do it themselves, and you're building a network, for example, that many users are going to connect into, like using Dropbox as an example, right? Like Dropbox today doesn't open source Dropbox, right? You can't even audit what really goes on underneath the hood. You just have to trust their guarantees. If Dropbox were to, however, make that service completely available to everybody, you might then ask, well, how do they monetize it, right? Because now, anybody can just do their own Dropbox or whatnot. And so one of the ideas and kind of next steps I think we'll see is that if you can build into your protocols that you're building as a cloud provider a means in which you can earn some sort of remuneration at a protocol level for what you've built and what you've made available. And if a network effect occurs around that, you don't actually have to run the bare metal yourself. And that's something that we're, I think hoping to see here in the Crowd Machine project is that, like we could easily launch a product here where we are just the only provider, right? In terms of the compute side, right? We're just, we have our own data center and everything just gets computed there and you can just build your blockchain applications faster and we'll deal with the compute side. But, that then means that we have just instantiated ourselves as another centralized authority and intermediary in the process of your application. So in a environment where that isn't us, we have to look at, well, what's the monetization for the company that made this all possible if you're not running that one piece of, centralized service. And I think that's a paradigm shift that will begin to occur as well, is that, could a cloud service provider actually offer their services and network without having to kind of hold the keys and everything, behind a firewall that is part of their kind of secret sauce.
Yeah.
Well, that's the vision.
Exactly.
That's the vision.
Yeah.
Guys, I've got to bounce. I've got to get up to Blockchain Expo. So,
well, thank you very much.
Well, if you're going to Blockchain Expo, it'd be good to do a quick interview after that to see what you thought of it. That'd be quite good.
Cool.
Yeah.
Happy to do it.
Yeah.
That'd be
Bye,
great.
guys.
All right.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
guys.
much for your time.
No problem.
Cheers,
Thanks for yours. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Ethan.
Thank you so much, Ian.
Are you looking for an easy way to buy Bitcoin or Ether on a safe, secure platform? Coinbase is the easiest place to buy and sell digital currencies. Sign up today as a friend of the Blockchain Show, and if you buy or sell $100 of Bitcoin or more, you'll earn $10 of free Bitcoin for yourself and $10 of Bitcoin to support this show. Join now using the link in this episode's show notes at theblockchainshow.com. To learn more, visit theblockchainshow.com.